Hello, my name is Chase Henson. I am the pastor at First Baptist Church, but you probably already knew that because you're watching on Facebook Live, likely because you've tuned into our page in some form or fashion. Perhaps you're seeing this video shared on somebody else's page, but either way, we're glad that you're joining us today on our Family Friday video. Now, do me a favor, I ask you to do this each week, but it's very, very helpful and very important for us. If you haven't liked our page, please take a moment to like our page. Also, in that same area of liking the page, there is a thing where you can follow our page, and it will bring up several options if you choose to follow the page. You can see our content first, or you can choose several different options, and we'd love for you to make sure that you click follow and see content first. That way, anytime we go live or anything that we post on our Facebook page will come up as soon as we post it. Don't forget that you can also interact with us through the comments, whether during the video or later on. Either way, make sure that you share this video as you're watching it right now, or later on if you happen to be watching it then. Now, I'm doing our Family Friday from the Henson house today, so there's a significant likelihood that you might see a kid run through here or come ask a question at some point. So hopefully we won't get distracted too much, but we're kind of doing the at-home, keeping the kids, doing the work, all that together. In fact, one just ran through right now. All right, so today we're going to be talking about the importance and the power of family traditions. Now, if you have kids, then you know that they are ritual thinkers. If you ask them, what does your family do? They're going to say, well, we always, or we never, even though a lot of times kids don't really know what those words mean. But that's what they say because they think that once something is done, that it's going to be done like that in perpetuity. In fact, one time, we started to go to Sonic. I started taking the boys to Sonic after school sometimes on Fridays. I ended up having to quit doing it because instead of it being a gesture, here's one actually. There's a kid. Oh, there's another kid over there. All right, y'all go play. All right, go potty.
What are you doing?
You're getting a real view of the Henson family right now.
What are you doing?
All right.
What are you doing?
Anyway, we went to Sonic. Buddy, I'm trying to tell everybody what it's like to live a family life.
What are you doing?
I'm talking to them about family traditions. Can you go play for a minute? All right. So anyway, the Sonic story. I started taking them to Sonic, and they began to expect it because they think, oh, well, you do something once, then you have a tradition, right? Why is this? Well, kids need stability, right? They want a sense of connectiveness. They need to feel that idea of being a part. And so traditions are a very good way, or they're built into even the life of humanity to provide this. Even the Old Testament, New Testament do this. This is why we celebrate things like the ordinances where we do baptism or the Lord's Supper, because these are traditions, things that are done that form and reinforce the values of a group of people. So I'm going to give you a few key ideas here today, and then give you some strategies for how we might build these in our families. So the first thing I'm going to say to you is that traditions help to create a family culture, right? They reinforce values. They tell us what's important to our family. What do we want them to believe? What do we want them to do? How do we want them to be? And as such, they can be both positive and negative forces in the life of a family. And sometimes traditions turn out negative because they bring a lot of stress, and perhaps we do things over and over and over again that we shouldn't do, right? Because traditions are simply that. They are repeated behaviors or actions or events that we do that bring with them some sort of message. So we have to learn to be intentional about the traditions that we build, because they're going to give identity to our family. What is this family about? They provide, as I said, stability and comfort and security. They tend to strengthen the relationships and build those connections, especially as we share history, right? So as you grew up, you had things that your family always did or did on a regular occasion, and you thought about that as what is part and parcel of family life. Even if another family didn't do that, there is a sense in which your experience with family is built on the things that you did. Of course, they allow us to pass on family history and heritage, And that's good because that places our lives into a larger story and tells us that we are part of a continuing reality in this world. And of course, one of the main things that we gain from family traditions as part of that culture is we build memories, whether that's memories that you have because you did something over and over and over again, or each year you took a family vacation, and so you have memories built on top of those. Now, a lot of times we tend to think about traditions as big, more elaborate kind of things, right? We're going to talk about, for instance, some Christmas ones in just a moment. But they really don't have to be. They can be big or small. For instance, one of the things that we do that we really didn't intend to make a tradition, but it's kind of become that, is a lot of times if we order pizza, let's say on Friday or Saturday night or something like that, we'll put out a kind of like a picnic blanket sort of thing in the living room and then watch a movie. And so that's kind of become a family tradition, a time for us to sit down, enjoy something together, and do something a little bit different because we usually eat at the table and things like this. So they can be big or they can be small, but they are just these repeated things that build that culture and those values. Now, traditions and daily routines are related to one another, but they're not necessarily the same. Daily routines are things that you do every day that are necessary to the life of your family, but don't always carry the same power of that value carrying and message and the ability to form your family as you want. They are part and parcel of your daily activity, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're traditions. Like, for instance, every day you're going to fix your kid a lunch for school, or you're going to give them a bath. Those things may not actually be traditions, and sometimes they may be, right? It may be that you do something on a daily basis that is a tradition and builds that, but they're not always the same thing. One of the key differences between a routine and a tradition is that a tradition is really designed with intention to build your family around a certain value set or for a certain purpose. So, traditions, though, need to be malleable to a certain degree, right? They are solid because they're patterns, but they're not rigid in the sense that they're chiseled in stone. They're not laws for your family. They're designed to serve your family rather than your family serving them. And this is one of the places where traditions can have a negative effect. If traditions become so powerful in your family that you must do them, or you can't possibly operate as a family, then you've gone from the tradition serving your family and benefiting the life of your family into you're serving it. Very similar to what Jesus talks about in Mark chapter 7, right? It's not what goes into a man that makes him unclean, but what comes out, because he's teaching on this idea of tradition, that they have elevated traditions, the Pharisees, above the level of truth and service. And so what ends up happening is people serve the law rather than the law serving them, or the traditions that have been added on top of the law. So they're not laws, they're designed to serve your family. So there has to be enough substance to them for them to be meaningful, and they have to be enough of a pattern, enough rigidity so that they are recognizable. But they don't have to be worked in stone, right? For instance, you may have traditions that work really well when your kids are toddlers, but as they grow up, they don't carry that same meaning, and so you build new ones. And in fact, we do this all the time, but we don't always think about what they're doing. So here's a good rule of thumb to use if you're trying to evaluate, is this something that we should do or not? Is this a tradition that we should build or maintain or keep? So if a tradition feels forced, or it causes more stress than it brings joy, then it may not be worth keeping and it may not be worth doing. Or perhaps it just needs to be changed or tweaked in some way in order to make it more beneficial to your family. So for instance, right, often families gather together at Easter or Christmas or Thanksgiving and do a meal. And that's going to carry a certain amount of stress to it. But if that stress is too much, it overshadows and eclipses the joy of those occasions, then perhaps it needs to be simplified. And instead of doing something so elaborate, maybe it can be more simple. So you can still keep the tradition, but make it more enjoyable. So I'm going to give you a few action steps here about how you can build these things into your family, or some tips as well. The first thing is this: don't try to recreate all of your family's traditions when you were growing up. For a couple reasons. One, you have a new family. You and your spouse, y'all have built a new family, right? The scripture says, leave your father and mother and be joined, cleave to your new spouse. That doesn't mean you can't bring things over, but don't try to recreate it. Because in fact, there's no real way to do that, because you're an entirely new family. It's not going to feel the same. It's not going to be exactly the same, because you have a new existence. And so you don't have to recreate everything you had from growing up. The second reason that this is not the best idea is because if you bring all of yours and your spouse brings all of theirs, you're going to have so many traditions that they're going to lose their meaning in the sheer volume of the traditions themselves. So you're going to have to be selective. Choose things that you want to keep and choose things that you want to leave. And form your own family culture in that way. And so some things are going to be really, really important to you, and you can bring those over. And some things won't be quite as important, or perhaps you can do something that has a similar meaning but doesn't have to be the exact same format. All right, so second thing is, as I said, because traditions are not written in stone, they're not laws, don't be afraid to try something new, right? If it doesn't work or you don't like it after you try it, don't feel bound to it. Just try something different and keep trying things until you find something that's meaningful to your family. And think about how new things can be introduced over time. As I said, perhaps with each new life stage of your kids, or perhaps after your kids grow up and get married, right? Your traditions are going to change, and so try something new. Try to find a way to adapt. The third thing I was going to say to you about this is don't try too much. As I said, the sheer volume of traditions can sometimes make them meaningless, and so we need to strive for quality, not for quantity, right? Meaningfulness and the significance that a thing has for your family is more important than the number of traditions that you're able to put into a Christmas season or into a birthday or whatever else. Now, as I said, traditions can either be big or small. The more occasional they are tend to be the more elaborate and large they are, right? So the traditions that you have at a birthday or a holiday are probably going to be more elaborate, rather than the traditions that you have on a weekly, monthly basis, or maybe even daily basis, are going to be a little bit different. So just think about that. They don't all have to be the same size. They don't all have to have the same elaborate nature. So don't try to do too much. Look for meaningful expressions rather than quantity. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of Christmas traditions that we do since it's Christmas time, so that you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about here. So one of the things that we do is we do this unwrapping the nativity thing. Melissa found a book at Lifeway a couple years ago, where you take a nativity set and you wrap up the different pieces. You wrap Mary and Joseph and the animals and whatnot. And then each day there is a reading, like a poem that goes with it, that progressively unfolds the Christmas story. And the benefit of something like this is it helps us to really, as the hubbub of the season goes around, we really get to focus on what are we talking about? What is the significance of this season? And are we teaching our children the kinds of things that are important about what Christ came to do in the world at Christmas, and then, of course, going to the cross? Now, this is just an example. You don't have to do. There's lots of different ways to keep Christ at the center of Christmas, but this is a way in which a tradition can serve a value. Now, as with all books, right, there are some things in the book that are not as historically accurate, or so we may have to say, now, what does the Scripture say? What does the Bible say about the way these things worked out? Did the wise men show up at the time of Jesus' birth? Well, no, they didn't. They came later, and things like this. But generally speaking, allows us to frame the Christmas season and have a tradition that works within our goal of teaching them what the gospel is about and how we can show them what Jesus came to do in saving them from their sins. Another thing we often do about this is a countdown to Christmas. And my mom recently gave the boys a little ornament that does this. We have a wall hanging. And so as we get closer, right, we get to talk about, well, what is it that's important at Christmas? What are you looking forward to? And so those are teaching moments where we get to talk to our kids and have the opportunity to form those values and teach them what we want them to know. Another example of something that we do is each year we hang an ornament. We also have a snow globe of Santa kneeling to the manger, to Jesus in the manger. And this is one of the things that we chose to do as a family because we wanted the kids to see that Santa, as important as neat as he is still in service to Christ, that the real point of the season is not getting gifts from Santa, as fun as that is, but in finding Christ, the real gift of Christmas. There's other things that we do, like going to Christmas Eve services or going to see Christmas lights, but these are a few examples of the ways in which Christmas traditions in particular, as an example, can form what we want our family to be like, right? We want it to be somewhere that there's fun, that there's imagination, that we celebrate things that are part and parcel of a holiday, but we're also trying to redeem some of those things to allow us to teach our kids what we believe to be important about Christ, about the gospel, about what our family is built on. So what I'm going to ask you to do here is, I think it's very important for us to share traditions with one another because it gives people ideas of some things they can do, and also teaches us ways in which other families are building seeing the power and importance of traditions and building that culture and that texture to their family. So I'm going to ask you to do one of two things. Either you can write up a little thing and put it in the comments, or perhaps what you can do is you can even do a small live video for yourself and tag me or tag our Facebook page in the videos. That way we can see what sort of traditions that you guys do as well. Now, I'm going to post later on in the comments of this a link to my blog post about this. I do a blog post each week also on this, and so I'm going to post a link to that, and in that blog post there's going to be some links to some helpful pages about family traditions. There's some that have lots of ideas about how you can build these things, and others about the importance and how it works out. Some of the things I've shared with you as well. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to watch today. We had several people tune in live today, so I'm glad for all those that did. If you will, please take a chance to share, comment, like, follow us on Facebook. All of that is helpful in getting you content, but also sharing it with other people that may not know about what we're doing at First Baptist Bonham. So, in the meantime, I hope the Lord blesses you and keeps you. May His face shine upon you, and Merry, Merry, Merry Christmas.